I held on to my life jacket. I got above the surface, took in some much needed H2O. I made it off to the side, and I found my wife alive half mile downstream, and we've not been kayaking since. But I certainly learned a great lesson that day, and that is this: it is really hard to stand up against the current of a powerful river. And I'd also like to say that it's hard to stand up against the current of our culture in many ways, but especially when it comes to relationships between men and women. Our culture just has a certain way of getting us to approach these relationships, looking at these relationships, and it's really hard to not take that in. We could be devout Catholics, we could go to Bible study, we could go to daily Mass, and we're still very much influenced by this culture. But if we look at what's really happening in the culture, we have to ask ourselves, is that the kind of river I want to be going down? And if we just look at the bigger picture of relationships between men and women, let's talk about marriages. How are marriages doing these days? What do statistics show us? About half of all marriages end in divorce. And there are many college students and young adults that I meet all around the country that they want to get married, but they're nervous. Is it really going to work? There's a lot of insecurity in their relationships. But everyone talks about that side of the picture. But if you remember math class, you had your little pie diagram, the big circle. And you've got half of it shaded in divorce. That's a sad thing, but everybody talks about that. I'm not going to talk about that today. Not because it's not real. I've got dear friends who've gone through the pain of divorce. And I've worked with college students and young people for close to 20 years now, and I've met many of them as they move into their adult years and as they enter into relationships of their own. They describe how, if they grew up in a home like that, how much it affected them, and they realize that only as they get older, how they approach relationships and all. So this is real. I know how hard that is, but I'm not going to talk about that side of the equation. I want to talk about the other half. How are the other half of marriages doing? Are those marriages happy ones? Are those marriages in which husbands and wives really feel close together? They feel like they married their best friend? Do you know what some studies show? That about, guess what percentage of marriages are really happy? They have emotional closeness together. Only about 12%. So picture that. Half of all end in divorce. So you got that half. And then on this other half, it's just a sliver of the pie that are really happy marriages. We want something better in our lives. Thanks be to God, they're staying together. That's a good thing. But a great marriage isn't one that just stays together. Just think about that. Imagine we bump into each other at a Focus conference a couple years from now, and they say, "Oh, Dr. Sri, remember you talked about marriage. How's your marriage with Beth going?" I said, "Oh, it's great. We haven't divorced yet." That doesn't make a great marriage. Thanks be to God, someone stays together, but when a great marriage is one in which you can look your spouse in the eye 10, 20, 30 years into it and say, "I love you more now today than I did when we were first married." That's what we want to aim for. But if we follow the path of the culture, we're not headed toward a great marriage.